Yes, good afternoon. Welcome everyone to the next session, which is session 3. On this point, we will talk about the role of the private sector in looking after the mangrove forests and the restoration, and what we can help achieve our net zero target. So these are stories of partnership. They are partners and they will have measures that we can adapt to our own application. So I would like to provide the stage to Mr. Pet Manopravit to conduct the session. Thank you. Yes, good afternoon. I would like to thank IUCN, Dow Company, as well as Department of Marine and Coastal Conservation. I think this is the most important part when we're talking about low carbon and our main targets. It is a new opportunity in managing our biodiversity and conservation. I think this morning we had a chance to review and go deeper into our understanding about blue carbon, as well as the directions for mitigating climate change effects. And one very important issue I want to emphasize is the link between the crisis and the impact of climate change and also the environment, because most of the time people feel like net zero and carbon neutrality becomes of utmost importance, but most people ignore the biodiversity protection, which I think has become an even more urgent issue. I think low carbon and carbon credit actually pointed out that these two issues are actually interlinked and the same. So we have to forge new paths, such as nature-based solutions, using nature as a foundation. Several experts have pointed out that this is a huge opportunity for Thailand, because we can actually feel that if you want to change any and turn around this crisis we're facing, is we need to provide importance to the revival of the economy and the eco-service system. I think most people who are in the conservation field and the environmental management, we know of the various success factors that can contribute: academic knowledge, public participation, community participation, legal enforcement. And a very important part is the resources of funding for carbon credit and blue carbon. You have to start with the research in order to bring in public participation. So this afternoon we have two main sessions. I will lead that to a joint measure together. The first is stories from partnership, the role of the private sector in reviving the environment, and second is NGOs and public participation. May I invite the panelists for the first group is the role of the private sector. May I invite Dr. Orathai Wongraktham to come up on the stage, and from the TBCSD. And can I invite Mr. Amon Pinyo? คุณพรณีทองอมรพิญโย from the Dow Thailand Group, and the third is คุณดาวรุ่งใจจิน and lastly, could we have Mr. Smithy from แม่ฟ้าหลวง Foundation under royal patronage. May I have an applause to welcome them? We have about 10 minutes for each participant, so can you please be brief so that there's time for exchanges. I would like to recap from this morning. I think from listening to all of you, we already know that the knowledge base we have a very strong foundation, and therefore carbon credit will lead to conservation, which is like science-based target. And we are going to discuss what are the cooperation mechanism. In terms of carbon credit, we feel that it is actually very concrete. The public sector, the private sector knows this very well. It's probably a game changer as well. There are ideas for movement forward, but when you start to scale up, there's always a problem. Before we go, however, everyone has been focusing on blue carbon, and we need not only focus on blue carbon, it's not equal to replanting. And we thought about waste management hierarchy. There's a inverted triangle. Usually the way out that everyone wants is, and the most effective one, is the prevention of leakage of waste into the system, and the screening and filtering before you come to recycling and recovery. When you come to conservation, it's the same. We have to decide on the actual hierarchy. The inverted triangle might be the last resort, but if the hierarchy is similar to the waste management, which is ecosystem management hierarchy, is the prevention and mitigation before you need to reduce the impact. And also the offset may be the last resort if there's no other ways. If we start with the right channel and we have knowledge to use blue carbon, this will link us back very well to the protection of biodiversity. First of all, can I invite Dr. Nok or Dr. Orathai Pong Raktham? We've worked together in several projects. Can you please talk about the role of the private sector in the conservation and restoration of the blue carbon areas in Thailand? You are now Secretary of the Thailand Business Council for Business Development, or TBCSD, right?
Good afternoon to all the participants here in the conference room and also from the online participants. I would be informing you about one organization that is a collaboration of the private sector. It's called the Thailand Business Council for Sustainable Development, and the works are related to climate actions and the works involved with the conservations and restorations of the blue carbon area. And I would like to start by informing you the background of TBCSD. Maybe a number of you might not be hearing about our organizations. So the full name is the Business Council for Sustainable Development. It has been established in the year 1993, so almost 30 years, by a group of business who are leaders for sustainable in Thailand, coming together and to create the TBCSD to promote the sustainable business practices. And later on, TBCSD has been transformed, aside from sustainable business practices in their own organization, is to support the policy advocacy and national agendas that involve with the conservation and sustainabilities. TBCSD is not a single organization in Thailand, but is a unit of World Business Council for Sustainable Development, or the WBCSD, and we work together in the exchange of knowledge, facilitating the collaborations in the business sectors in Thailand and other countries. And latest one, if we will co-write proposals to brainstorm, to get the more collaborations of the project in the countries and the regions. So this is are the numbers of TBCSD. We have 43 private companies covering different various sectors, from financials, services, food and beverages, resources, industrials, technologies, and properties and constructions. TBCSD, aside from working with all the members, we also work with collaborative partners to scale up our work and to enhance it to the country level. We work together with FTI, Thai Chamber of Commerce, SET, and TGO. TEI, or Thailand Environment Institute, where I work, is a secretariat of the TBCSD. TEI is the global think tank that had been acknowledged by a number of countries. We work on environment, various fields. We covering the different and upcoming topics, and with a logo that would explain the scope of TEI work. So these are the framework of the TBCSD. Importantly, the business sectors have to have a long-lasting foundation both in the environment and societal dimensions. So we set up platforms similar to this conference to find a direction together to have the policy support. And we have the projects, it's called collective projects. We're focusing on the three main things. Actually, the number is now 43 members company. We work on air pollution, PM 2.5, climate change, plastic waste management as well. And we also have area-based project, which is a project that some of the members in paying attention to. The first one is BDNA, which is a project about the biodiversities and electronic waste management. Furthermore, we also promote the youth to be taking a part in the policy formulations and the policy implementation through the project called Youth in Charge. So these are the overview of our work. And I would like to stress on the work directly about climate change and the topic of today, about carbon credit and blue carbon. For climate change, TBCSD is working together with a national organization, which is ONEP, the policy agency, and TGO, to find the direction that the major business sectors could provide support to the national agenda, and also how to create a sustainable business operation as well. And ONEP helped us with laying out the framework for the achievement that Thailand has pledged. And the TGO assists us with the index for the low carbon and sustainable business, and also to set a target that is science-based. And TBCSD has a duty to facilitate the cooperation and share the knowledge to the business sectors. For climate change, this year we have the commitment to bring our members to low carbon and sustainable business. So we set up series for training. What is low carbon and sustainable business? What are the standards? What data has been required? And how do we achieve that goal? So we set up this series for education and to assist, to provide support for our members to achieve the goal. And furthermore, TEI and TBCSD work together with GIZ to create CSR Climate Actions Manual. As we know, we have a budget for CSR. And we're thinking that how do we do so that the budget set aside for CSR would maximize the impact as much as possible. So we need to have a manual or guideline for the company who's uncertain on the direction to go to have options for their CSO. And in that manual cover the CSR activities for the business sectors for all the branches as you shown on the circle on the right hand side. And also each of the sectors would have example also on the projects activities, and there would be a step-by-step explanation and with the budget allocations and who's a contact point. This guidebook or the manual has already been distributed for feedback but not yet finalized, but you can follow up on the TEI and TBSC for the finalized version. For blue carbon, the area habitats of blue carbon for the business sector see the importance of these emerging issues, that the habitat of blue carbon is extremely important. So we have the projects and for conservations and rehabilitations of blue carbons. Every year we will have the activities. It's not just to plant the trees or restoring the mangrove forest and come back and take photos, that's all. No, but we discuss with the academic institutions to see which species suitable, which locations require attention, and we do monitoring and evaluations constantly as well. So TBCSC also having activities with the member, and our members companies also have their own project, because when we have TAI as a think tank, we would discuss with them about the work plan and monitoring system, and these are the pictures of the members' activities. So all organizations, all company would take part in their own effort, and we have collective efforts that we work together. And last but not least, I would like to leave a message that for collaborations for the conservation of natural resources and sustainability is not a competition between business sector. The more we collaborate, the more we achieve success and can scale up. So I would like to invite all of you who are interested, please contact us. You don't need to become member. We can discuss about the knowledge exchange, just like today's conference. So we would have opportunities to meet and exchange valuable information together. And importantly is in technology and science to incorporate and adopt and integrate into our project. Because if you can't measure the outcome, you can't specify the impact, whether you achieve the goals or any positive impact or not. And communication is a key. Stakeholders need to understand to be having the same goals and objectives and have a clear communication so that the work would be seamless. And also we need reporting as well to know what's the outcome of the project. And this is a QR code of the TBCSD. If you're interested, you can scan it. And if you have any additional questions, please contact me directly. Thank you very much.
Thank you. You have actually finished right before time for 1 minute. Let me ask you, because you are a big organization that has all of these large companies, the blue carbon concept, how interested are these partners how interested are they in the blue carbon concept? It is part of climate change, and you cannot separate it off. The members of TBCSD, some are large companies and some are smaller companies. The large companies have global policy in which they have to comply with CSR. And then when they look to us, they feel that it is very easy for them to take up such a project. So they are interested. But once it becomes an issue of an association, we thought that we should be working for the impact at the national level than simply just holding a meeting. So we have a subcommittee on climate change, and our restoration projects would be related to mangrove landscaping, and also partly because we are working with the local communities in the coastal areas. If you want to drive this more, you can propose more activities related to more blue carbon, the habitat of the various animals as well. Thank you. Thank you very much. What about guidelines on CSR? I think that would be extremely useful because you can see that there are a lot of resources from each company, but they might lack technical knowledge. One thing which I feel is related to blue carbon is science-based target. So is it possible for the business to look at this as part of a restoration process, maybe replanting, maybe half? But the efficiency of the revival or restoration is that you need to follow all the data. I don't know what mechanisms are there in order for capacity building of the community. I have to say that everything we've done is on a voluntary basis. You cannot force the companies to participate, but most of the members are interested in sustainability and they have other related activities already. So we can discuss what is the best means to go about it. Say for growing of the forest, we talk about the communities around the mangrove forest. So we discuss this with them, and for climate change that are related, we also will set targets. As you can see, the variety and diversity of 43 companies are quite a lot. So we need to discuss in order to find a point where we agree, and we will involve TGO in this. I will share it with you at a later date. Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Dr. Orathai Pongraktham. May I move on then to one of the hosts, is the Dow company, Dow Thailand, who is the main partner for organization of the Blue Carbon Conference. I think Dow is working a lot also on the circular economy, plastic waste, as well as blue carbon now. Kun Porani, can you please explain a little bit more about your active participation in the private sector? So many companies, so many footprints. Where should we start from? In their own sector, or should you support associations in the restoration of carbon? Thank you very much, Kun Pet. Let me use this 10 minutes to tell you all about it. First of all, I would like to introduce you to Dow, so that you would know who we are and what activities we are doing. Dow, we are actually 125 years old. Our mother company is in the US. We have many businesses all over the world, more than 150 countries, and we have operations and 104 factories, manufacturing sites in 31 countries. At present, we have about 30,000 workers all over the world. So you can see this is our global scale. We are in every continent, and in each continent there's about 10 to 30 bases. In Thailand, we are one of the bases in Asia Pacific. In Thailand, we are 50 years old. We have one of the largest operations. Actually, the largest operation in Asia Pacific. We have a factory which is world scale in Mataput and Rayong. There are 13 plants, and we have about 1,000 workers in these plants. We produce many products. We are very high quality plastic or very high quality chemicals that you use for packaging, for construction, for automobiles, and also for consumer products. The shampoo, soap, all this contains the ingredients that Dow produce. So we know that we have a big role. If we want to be sustainable, we produce the raw materials for these products that everyone is using. So Dow have announced our own target for sustainability. By 2050, we will be carbon neutral, and by 2030, we will reduce carbon emission by 15% from our baseline. In terms of waste, for our product will be we will be closing the loops on our product, which means that all of the products we will be selling to our clients can be recycled or reused 100% by 2030. We are gradually developing new products and changing our products. That is the Stop the Waste. We will be also working with partners in recycling used plastic for reuse at least 1 million tons. Now let's look at decarbonization. What is Dow doing? From this page, you can see overview. The 1 and 2. These are chemical industry, scope 1 and scope 2. Scope 1 is to cut down on carbon at the manufacturing process. Secondly, energy usage, it must be renewable. So you can see that in the chemical industry, these two parts are not very much compared to others. The footprints of the chemical industry is lower than agriculture, lower than cement, lower than iron. But of course, in order to reduce it significantly is in the third part, which is supply chain, which is scope 3. When we look at the end product, when you look at FCG, or fast-moving products, which are consumer goods, or fashion, automobiles, and electronics, you can see that the scope 1 and 2 is actually quite low, but scope 3 for supply chain is quite significant. So this is why Dow is focusing on innovation for the product, because once you start doing this, it will assist the industry to cut down on carbon emission and have a lower carbon footprint. Dow itself works on all 3 scopes, 1, 2, and 3. We look at the production of the products. We have means to cut down on carbon emission, starting from the design of the factory itself. We are able to reduce through design. So very low carbon emission from the industry. And then afterwards, we look at the energy. Are there any recyclable energy or alternative energy we can use? For our products, these are examples. Even though it's plastic, which are pouch, which are several layers, but they use the same type of material, and therefore the multi-layer monomaterial is that even though there are several layers, but it's all mono material. That's why it's very easy to recycle. They use less plastic pellets, and of course the carbon footprint is lower. And finally, once you recycle it, you can reuse it as plastic for packaging again. So it's a PCR, recyclable plastic, so that they do not leak into the environment. Another important part is partnership. For partnership, we work with our customers, what products they're using, can we find a closed loop? If there are residues of plastic, we will help the community do a recycle as pallets, blocks for the road, for example. For decarbonization, in Canada, we have a factory that is totally net zero. We do not emit any CO2 at all. Net zero does not mean no production. It means that in the production, everything has been captured into the storage. Canadian government has created a carbon capture storage, and we are going to be building our factory in this estate, what is going to be the first net zero factory. This is another factory for advanced recycling plastic pellets. We use plastic and produce it as new plastic pellets. This has just been ongoing. If Thailand is ready, you can expand on this as well. In terms of mangrove forests, apart from Scope 1 and 2, the Mangrove Alliance is another effort. We don't want to see just replanting trees or growing trees. We want to give back to society and economy. So we would like to thank experts from various sectors who are our committee for driving the projects, because we want to ensure that the community living with the forest must be sustainable. The people can be used, like the Princess Mother said, the people can live, the forest can live. So therefore, we work on several activities to ensure that the community takes part, whether it is a tourism, becomes a blue destination, and people who seek benefits from the forest are also looking after the forest. The community grows the trees, and therefore they seek blue carbon. So payment for blue carbon should also filter down to the community so that they can look after the forest and they can make their livelihood in the forest and could expand the area for conservation of the forest as well. Actually, the mangrove forest, we've been working since about 10 years ago, and we are now expanding our project. We have the mayor from Prasar who has joined us. It is a great support from the local administration as well as the state agencies and the community in the area. We have been working, as I mentioned, 10 years, and we created a manual for mangroves. We also organized several platforms to provide knowledge on right conservation for mangroves. The next step that we are going to be working on, we have to study a baseline, to do a socio-economy baseline survey so that we know in the conservation area what are the baseline data, so that in our future work we can develop this much more. And there will be a curriculum to be a channel for production, for conservation, and to also achieve carbon credit at the same time. There is also public relation and social media. You have to look after the forest, you have to look at the seagrass and the ecosystem itself. And what can you do to ensure that youth and the people in the community knows how to do it as well. The next generation will be a strong force for the protection of the mangrove forest. Thank you. So that is the overview of Dow, and you can certainly look for more information in our website. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. And we see the potentials of when the private sectors come into play, and also to try to make change. And we see that in the operations are trying to reduce the one that they can to them, and also there's new technologies that step in to take place to make the production site more increase the efficiency and effectiveness. So also the part that we call Prasar, is it because it's near your operation site? We choose Prasar as a pilot area because we and Prasar will coexist together for a long time. Dow and our staff are doing the mangrove reforestations for a long time. I think the mayor would be talking about this later on. Previously, it was a small area and there's some degraded zone. But after we step in to help each other, and our staff are going every year to do the reforestations for more than 10 years, so it's now very healthy forest. We choose it because we're near each other, we are neighbor, and it's the area for our work, and we've been together for a really long time. So Prasar is another example that I see a lot of benefits coming out from the health restorations of mangrove forests. It's also about ecotourism's benefit, social benefits. So it is a clear evidence that when you restore the ecosystem, you probably look at carbon credit, but actually there's a more dimensional benefit also for the livelihood of the communities. I would like to raise another sample that I think it is an obvious one. So when the private sectors are pushing forward or mobilizing for the agendas, it also has an impact on the policy level. Another forum that now really active on is the waste management and also the plastic pollutions. And when you go deeper, we see that the private sectors are really aware that if the policy level is not moving, you can't scale it up. So now you're pushing for the EPR law. I really want to see this dimension as well, that for the management of biodiversity and conservation has barriers. So if there's a work on collaborations in more depth and rely on the scientific information and data, it would help create a good understanding and common grounds. On this forum, we talk a lot about don't just look at planting. You have to think about maintenance and conservation. And the channel in investment for the conservation is something that we need to consider and is not talked about enough. So I would like to continue. Actually, we have questions, but would like to continue first to Director Dao Rung from Department of Marine and Coastal Resources. It is also important issues about the government policy in the mangrove restorations by the private sectors. We see that there's less manpower in the government sector as well. So there's more limitation and constraint that everyone's are facing. So you need to adjust the way to work and also to be more collaborative with private sectors and other stakeholders. So I would like to invite Ms. Dao Rung, please, the directors. So good afternoon to all the participants, both on site and online. For the DMCR, actually, we are overseeing the mangrove forest. But before we talk about how do we do the restorations of mangrove forests, I would like to ask you to think about the risk on climate change first. I believe that everyone can acknowledge by yourself, you can feel it, that now we've been impacted by climate change, that you can see for your own eyes and experience, because the greenhouse gas has the quality to absorb the heat wave from the environment, from the atmosphere. So when we're getting older, why the world temperature is getting hotter? This graph is an attempt of the scientific to forecast that there's different scenario, that if we don't do anything, business as usual, the world would be encountering the hotter temperatures, more than 2 Celsius degrees. And if that day comes, the whole world would be entering the crisis stage for the climate change. From the Global Carbon Atlas, this is information from the year 2020. The amount of CO2 emissions of the whole world, it's about 33,000 million tons. Of course, the big five have the highest rate for the emissions of CO2. For Thailand, the latest one is that we are ranked number 24. It's about 0.76. It's actually not a lot. If you look at percentage, it's not a lot, but okay, we will talk about risk in a bit. But these are the sequence of what happens. So the whole world are aware. There's a warning sign that the world are entering the climate change, erratic climate, since the establishment of the IPCC, the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change. This is a starting point. That is very obvious as the whole world are seeing the importance of the climate change and the impact. Afterward, there's a COP3 conference in Japan that we know is under Tokyo Protocol in the year 1997. Tokyo Protocol is mainly set up the effort to get the world communities to reduce the impact of climate change. There's a discussion on the 7 types of greenhouse gas that play adverse impact on the world's atmosphere. But at that time, there's no concrete actions. And after 18 years afterward, we took long time to mobilize from the initiative to really take action on it. After that, 18 years afterward, we have the Paris Agreement in the year 2015. But there's a little bit more clarity, but still not enough on who needs to do what and how much within what time frame. And the latest one, at the end of last year, November of the year 2021, there's a COP26 meeting in Glasgow. This COP26, there's more clarities because the world communities has already shared the target, shared the work, so that every countries are now aware that they need to have the NDCs in their own countries and have the clear time frame and with a measurable target. And Thailand also pledged to become carbon neutralities in 2050s and net zero in the year 2065. And for the COP26 conference, make Thailand have to expedite our net zeros to make it quicker, because otherwise it would not be timely enough. From the information of the German Watch is an agency monitoring the climate change of the world. They categorize the risk map of every country in the whole world, that if the temperature increase, what would be the risk in each country and what would be the impact. So for Thailand, we are small countries that we emit not even 1% of CO2 to the world, in the world, but we are classified as a countries that would be impacted and have one of the highest risks. We are ranked number 9 in the top 10 of the highest impact countries. And the reasons for this, they use 20 years historical data from each countries, see from the frequencies of disasters and the loss in both life and properties and economic loss in each time that the disaster occurred. But Thailand has been suffering a lot of economic losses, and most importantly, Thailand has no plan and measure in place to become resilient with climate change or to adapt. So that's why we rank number 9 in the whole world that would be impacted the most from the climate change. How risky? For the coastal provinces, Bangkok and the Central Plain, we have the risk of the land disappearing from the sea water flooding. And for the northern and the northeast regions, there would be the risk of drought, dry spell, fires, landslide. And all this, eventually, the whole of Thailand, almost the whole regions, would be suffering. And it would also impact the agricultural productivities and fisheries at the coastal area and lead to the loss of both the flora and fauna extinctions and with the biodiversities, with the resources for our tourism as well. We are having the tourism attractions because of our beautiful and pristine nature. So if we do not start to work on this with serious effort, I believe that in just a no longer than 10 years, all the impact would be like a domino effect, and not just the business sectors, but everyone would be impacted from climate change as well. So how do we do to mitigate this impact? So if we would like to mitigate the emissions, we need to change our behavior. But the business sectors that need to think and design about the productions when they do manufacturing, and Dow's business group already demonstrate that. You need to really think things through. You need to think from the upstream utilizations and at the end reused. There's the ease of recycle as well need to be considered. And technology is also important element to develop together with the behavior change. And last but not least, trees. Trees, we can all help together. We can do this to grow trees, because tree is the only living organism that could absorb carbon dioxide for their growth, and at the end it could sequester the carbon in their own trunks and the trees. So this is an investment that doesn't have a high cost. It's an investment that we all can do, plant trees. And for the DMCR, as agency in charge of the management of the mangrove forest resources, because mangrove forests have the high growth, comparing to the terrestrial forest growth, the rate is higher. From the academic number or statistic, before we expect that the mangrove forest would be able to sequester carbon dioxide about 2.75 ton CO2 equivalents per rye per year. But after the revisions of the data and the new data collections, we expect that one rye of mangrove forest could sequester carbons not less than 7 tons per rye per year. So for the DMCR, we are mobilizing with setting up the projects on the mangrove forest for the carbon credit. We set up in the 23 provinces in the three, and we start working on this in the year 2022. The objective is to encourage the private sectors and the other stakeholders who would be interested to take part in the mangrove forestations to sequester CO2. For the private sectors, we have the area for the work on this year is about 44,000 rye, and we consider the mangrove forest that the communities helped maintain previously in the community forest, or when we see that the community have the abilities and capacity to take care of their own forest. So we open up another channel for the community as well to step in to take charge to maintain that area that already a healthy mangrove forest to be even healthier, to enhance the capacity in the CO2 sequestrations. So how to nourish that forest to become even stronger. And for the community, we prepare the areas for 44,000 rye as well. And to push forward our work, to mobilize our work, the departments already have two regulations. The regulations for the carbon credit sharing between the private sectors and the community sectors. For the private sectors, we gradually allocated the area for 17 business companies, and we giving approval for them to take part in the projects. And for the community, we are now announcing the applications. We go on the grounds and we announce on the website to invite the community to submit the project for our approvals. For the communities, if the communities are ready and prepared to work, they can send this proposal to our department directly. Or if the communities have the business sectors or business company that would like to join force with the community, it could be done together as well. Or even if the community has the interest to join in the project with us, but still cannot manage to find business sectors to collaborate with, you can also inform the DMCR, because we have the business sectors who's already declared their interest to support the community in the forestations of the mangrove area. So we would act as the middle person to coordinate the collaboration between the two of you. So last but not least, I hope that everyone would now be becoming aware about climate change, and I would like to invite all of us to please start to make commitment and determine to do everything that you can to de-risk and to mitigate the hazards from the climate change. And I do hope that the DMCR would be another agency, another partner that would enable all of us here to make Thailand achieve the low carbon countries and the net zeros at the end. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Director Darung, who has stressed the importance of blue carbon. It's also point out that it's also reduction of risks of climate change impact to Thailand. If you look at the World Economic Forum discussions for risk from climate change or even the loss of biodiversity, these are all direct risks to business as well. So it's not no wonder that most business are interested. Actually, the 40,000 rai that you are providing to the community, it is, you don't have to replant anything, right? It's just a general maintenance. Yes, because the community forest, it's actually quite complete, but we need to stewardship, and we want the community and the companies around that to look after, because it's also the preservation of carbon in the area and to ensure good growth. So we have to manage it with knowledge, both from the community side and the private side. Department of Marine and Coastal Resources are ready to assist. So it's very interesting. Prevention of deterioration is extremely important as well, as we mentioned. So if the community can be supported with capacity building for better management, including the collection of data from many areas, we might really need baseline data for the carbon storage as well as biodiversity itself. For example, the seagrass amounts and the better and more perfect environment can sequester more carbon. So these data are important and will provide a better approach to management. So this is another key word, to have capacity building of the community. Right, let's move on to another sample. May I invite Kun Smithi Harunput from the Mae Pha Luang Foundation and the Royal Patronage, who have had a lot of experience in building cooperation between the private sector and the community in order to set up, even though it is an example from the terrestrial forest, it will provide us with an important example for the carbon credit for blue carbon. So thank you so much for inviting Mae Pha Luang Foundation. Actually, we work with terrestrial forests, so I would like to share from the community side, and I will talk about with the private companies. I will have to thank Dow as well. Actually, Ma Fa Luang was established by the Princess Mother. This was about 30 years ago. As Kun Pet has mentioned, our experience for restoration of terrestrial forests is quite extensive. So we know that preserving what you have is most important. This is what we first encountered when we started the project. But people on Doi Tung, there are 29 villages, more than 10,000 and more than 6 ethnic groups. They are a huge variety. We believe that the people should live with the forest. We use a socio-economic mechanism. They have to be fulfilled in their regular needs. They have to have their stomach feed. If we try and build socio-economic ecosystem for them, and then once they are well fed, they are happy, then they will improve. These pictures from 1988 to 2019, you can see that once you have the people's protection, the forest will return. We do biodiversity studies, and we found that the biodiversity is very low. You have to accept that the preservation aspect is extremely important. So Dr. Thanapong has taken the area in which we've worked with the Department of Forestry to be registered more than 221,949 rai to be registered for terrestrial carbon, which is about more than 30 million tons, 312,000 tons CO2 per year. The terrestrial forests have so many co-benefits. It's similar to the mangrove forest. It's not just simply the species. What we learned from the people in the area, it is a nursery for the young animals. It's a place where there's culture. And so the forest is not simply a florist. It is an area for food, for medicine, for the community. So MFL is working with the Department of Forestry, where there was a Forest Community Act of 2020. So you can see this is the area for the community forest, where the Department of Forestry has given it over to the committee to look after the forest. And to the right is a huge area of the forest. This zone is considered a buffer zone. To the left, there is just general areas for farmers. We work along with the Monterey and the Department of Forestry, and as well as the Department of Natural Parks. On the left side, we are consultants. We have experts who knows about carbon credit registry. We do PDP. We register for the community and the groups. The TJO and GISTA is working alongside with us. To the right, this is 2020, when we invite a lot of the private companies to come and work with the local community. The Ma Fa Luang is then an operator. So these companies must have clear and concrete concept that from reducing inside by 2020 or to 2030, they have to have clear targets. For the work, actually, when you do operations, you have to have academic knowledge. We work with GISDA to use remote sensing images where there is the forest or less dense, and our team would select an area. The mangrove can use the same principle, which I will share with you as to what we're going to be doing. Now, what happened is that not only the MFL will be working, there's only one person to the right who is standing and pointing. The rest are all the community people. They have to select their own people, And our expert then will train them in field work and how to use the various equipment. They have to know that once they go into the forest, how they lay out the plot, what plot they use, how do they tag the trees according to TGO specification. In using these instruments, you have to know that it is a 10-year project. You cannot wait for MFL to come back and look after it all the time. It's a work of the community. But the team will assist with technical knowledge, make the forms, collect all the species. But you have to realize that the species are not, we are good. We have met local seers, local scholars who know very well these plants, much better than us. We worked since 2020, and we work around 19,000 rai area. After the laying out the plot, we are going to set up a funding from the private sector for them to prevent wildfires, monitoring of wildfires by just the satellites, and we will send information that the fires are going to be here. You have to build a buffer zone. For example, we have another fund set up for development of the community. They will design their own activities, the money that's coming from the carbon credit, what they want to use, or to build up careers in order to protect the local resources. And we also have another group is we set up a women's group, use plastic, and one group, they set up a market to sell honey, for example. Now this year, MFL are expanding the project to the second phase, which is 32,500 rai. We're working in Chiang Mai, Chiang Dao. We completed the Chiang Mai project, and last month we just completed the work in 9,000 rai in Kampang Phet, and in November we'll start in Krabi, which is 9,200 rai. They are still under the community forest. I have to talk to the director Dow Rung whether it's within the authority of the coastal area or and we have to talk to Dr. Sanit, right? We talk to Dr. Pranom. When you do research in the mangrove forest, what do you do? I'm live up in the hills. We'll start in November this year. We will train all these Muslim communities in protecting the forest. And the Muslim group says, oh, you have to wear these rubber rings, in order to use. We think that at the end of this year and beginning of next year, we'll have studies from the mangrove case studies for you. This is the last slide. We work with Monterey. We are ending at 50,000 in 2021, and next year probably about 150,000 rai before we use other technology and satellite to expand to 500,000 rai all over the country. So I'm so happy to hear that you also have the DMC will also DMCR also has community forests. Maybe we can work together. And lastly, the carbon credits from the terrestrial forest related to 2.4 million. We have a credit of about 2 million tons, a little bit. But if you compare to the mangrove, certainly there's going to be so much more, right, in the mangrove forest. That's all you want to share in the beginning. Thank you very much.
ขอเสียงปรบมือหน่อยนะ
A round of applause, please.
ขอบคุณ
Thank you so much to Director Snit. And it's a clear example that for another factors that we might probably haven't talked much about, which is factors out of mentoring coaching organizations to really enable this project to reach the target. And this is an important piece of puzzle. Now we have the government agency who's really alert about it, the private sector is expressing their interest, but in practice and implementations, those details for the coachings, for the coordinators, and one thing that I believe that the Mae Fa Luang Foundations could express in the terrestrial forest is that you really need to make it edible, to be a tangible benefit that benefit the people on the ground. So for the marine sectors, we are actually at advantage because the resources from the oceans, we live with it, we eat it, we used to it. We might probably overlook it in a way, and we might not record it to highlight that the ecosystem services that we receive from the marine, how astronomical it is. From the land forest, it's from hunting, eating, but for it might be the difference, but with the marines, if you can conserve the area with effectiveness for tourism, I think the sea is a clear example that immense benefit just preserved it. And also disaster that the director Dow Rung said, if we do not protect or if we do not have the healthy ecosystem, we would be very vulnerable for the disasters. And I look at the land forest and I have hope that you demonstrate that it is really possible, and the carbon credit would be a new incentive that attract more collaborations and to gain attractions and uptake from the private sectors. Private sectors also like something that measurable, and you could be monitors. And I believe that if we can adapt it and can create collaborative mechanisms and enhance the capacities of the communities, so that because they need to understand, they need to be able to read the environment, to be able to monitor and measure and verify it. So we have hope to ignite and scale up for the effective ecosystem management in the futures. We have questions, and I believe all the speakers really keep up good time, and we have sufficient time for the Q&A. That's this one question that popping up since the beginning. I am not sure whose the question is posed to, but the question is, how do we know that is a no net loss? That we understand that the plantings have the principles and information for analysis. What are they? What are those that are required? It's a bit more technical. Is there anyone who would like to answer? So I understand that when we want to restore the forest, how do we be sure that there's no net loss? And what are the data for analyzing the impact? I would like to answer in the mangrove area. When we want to restore the mangrove forest, before there's this project for the carbon credit and mangrove forest, the DMCRs already do the restorations of the forest under our responsibility. It's one of the routine jobs that we need to do. But previously, we never measure carbon. So how do we know that the mangrove forest we consider the ecosystem and would not create the adverse impact on the biodiversities? Of course, the mangrove forest restorations, by nature itself, the mangrove forests have a clear zonations. And the zone that we can choose the species for planting, we consider the zonation as the main criteria. If it's at the front and next to the sea, next to the coast, have to be pioneer species, and then at the back would be different species. So we have to look at the softness or the hardness of the soil, the mud. If it's very soft, it would be the rhizophorus, and if it's very sandy, it has to be another type of species. So for the carbon credit plantations, we have the regulations and methodologies for the mangrove forest. We have the species that we need to consider. We have about 42 species to choose from for the mangrove forest. But of course, to prepare the land at the first instance, it might cause an impact. We might need to do the weeding, tilling, plowing, so that it also show that we can plant in it and then covering the full acreage. I think of one thing as well. I read one papers about restorations of marine and coastal ecosystem. It said where to restore is more important than how. And that's why in continuations to Professor Anjana talk this morning, is it possible to see the roadmap for nature-based solution if we focus on the restorations of the marine and coastal system? From the observation, say the Mae Phao Luang area, the areas are community forest that is outside of the conserve a national park. So for the management of the marine and coastal ecosystem, we have the protected area that is a formal one. For example, the national park, and we have the outlier, which is maybe a buffer zone. Is it possible for the organization as the TBCSD or Dow to be a main partner to take a look at the area for restoration, where should that be, and to prioritize the mapping and on voluntary basis? Actually, we discussed about this with DMCR as well. And DMCR, we have the Dow Thailand Mangrove Alliance, and it's in the flagship area in Thailand, starting from Rayong. But in the 5-year plan that we have Trat, Surat, and a number of provinces, also including Krabi, and it would be the area with high potentials. So we raised this issue together with the DMCR, and DMCR together with us as a co-creator of the project. We are thinking about prioritizing the location and which location are ready to scale up. In honesty, DMCR has been working on this with a multi-partner previously. Dow is supporting to achieve the ultimate goal for the conservation purpose that would benefit both the communities and business sectors and the environment. Therefore, for the roadmap, we had talked about it, and we would organize a workshop in the near future. Thank you very much, and I would like to leave it with the marine science organization who coordinate with the academic partners to plug this in to make sure that the location, we need to rely on other information that need to be factored in. For example, the area, and so we could see clear pictures on how do we mobilize it. I would like to add that for the work on environment and development, that what we do, we start from mapping to see what's the gap and where the problem lies, and members as the business sector, how can they help? And the knowledge that we gain from the partners, where could we obtain those information? If it's for the forestation, both in land and in the mangrove area, we would discuss with the DMCR and Department of Forestry to see which area is needed. It has to be the right way and legal. So we have those kind of information because we do mapping first. This is a great approach to further solutions for every solution actually. Thank you very much. Is plastic waste a threat as well? The question is quite broad. I can say yes, it does. Both from the upstream and downstream. The plastic production is from fossil fuel, and down the road is, yes, if I may, the plastic waste is a threat, but it is more in a management way. Plastic is a material that is important when you use it, both for the medical terms. We can't refuse to use plastic. We can't reject it. But the management is important. It is a threat, but at the same time, it's an opportunity. Because the plastic in itself, as we all aware, it's from oil. Fuel oil is from petroleum. It could be turned into petroleum again. That's why it could be turned into circularities. So please don't make it leak out of the loop. We need to put it in the circular loop. Whatever we do, we need to make sure, because all the resources in the world are resources that we have in hand, and we have diminished natural resources in all countries. Every resource is diminishing because we have more populations. In a few years, we might hit 8 billion people in the world. Therefore, it's insufficient natural resources. But how do we manage it? We need to manage waste and turn it into resources again. So all the waste are from the human's behavior. When we do consumptions, we might not manage it in a full circle. In Europe, they have the management. For example, all materials, glasses, plastic, paper, it could be returned back as recycled materials. So when it brought back in recycle loop, it turned into recycle and it has value. For the conservation, it is a threat. If our behavior is just discarding it, bin it for all the activities, from tourism, fisheries, from our occupation, it would all turn into threat. But it would turn into opportunities when the community and all of us extracted it from the environment, change our behavior to do the waste segregations in the right way. It would turn into opportunity and created value.
นะครับ รู้สึกเขาเตือนมาว่า
So we are running out of time. So I would like to continue. The blue carbon is the same. Blue carbon is a great opportunity, but we need to start it right. And I believe that this forum, we gained knowledge that would be beneficial for getting the policy recommendation to look ahead in the future in a systematic way. Because we would like the narrative on blue carbon to achieve more than just planting and where to plant it. But if we rely on the mechanism of blue carbon to see the connectivities on biodiversities and to provide solutions on the crisis of climate change, I strongly believe that it would unlock massive numbers of resources in the private sectors. Because all the companies setting the target to become net zero, to really take part as finding the solution. The crisis is ahead of us. In the next 10 years, we would see it even more obvious. If we prepare quicker, we can respond better and be more resilient. I would like to thank all the speakers. It is a session that I believe we have good and interesting examples, and it would be a starting point to elevate our narrative and dialogue about blue carbon as another important strategies to help us solve the problem on the resources management and climate change impact in a sustainable manner. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Dr. Orathai, Kun Porani, Dr. Samithi. I think everyone must participate, and you are an important factor in the conservation and